Hey guys, welcome to another game development game dev video. And like our previous tutorial videos, which was setting up and using Firestore with your Unity project in your game or anything, we will be doing another tutorial for a server setup and to create a online game backend service. We will set up a online backend for our multiplayer game on our server. So uh, I'm working on this new game concept for Halloween, which is a turn-based RPG game. And to save time and like not reinventing the wheel, I'm using this amazing asset by Suryon, turn-based RPG template. You can check it out, link will be in description. And this asset provides a like they have their own it provides integration for a PHP based web service backend. So what that means is that it's not completely multiplayer, but you can have a connected online experience where a lot of things can be like managed through a server, especially clan battles, PvP, etc. And this is what your backend database looks like. It stores player data, currency and stuff, so you don't have to save everything on the client side, which is prone to hacking and all. So if you open this their GitHub for the PHP backend service, uh, it's quite easy and self-explanatory. Like you just download a zip file, unzip it, set up, configure your database details and stuff. And after it, you just where is it? Their scene, demo, I think. Yeah, you just go to the scene, game instance, and set up your service URL here. The things we will be requiring to do this exercise will be a Linux server. It can be a VPS, it can be a dedicated server, it can be a cloud server, or it can even be, well, something on your own PC via, I don't know, some VM or anything. And then after setting up our Linux server, we will be using what we call a LEMP stack, LEMP, which means Linux, Nginx, MySQL, PHP. And this LEMP stack is basically the base of almost all online web services and applications, whether it's a website, whether it's a WordPress blog. Most of the things that you set up as web services are usually run using these four things, the LAMP stack. And so to go through all this, basically Linux is the operating system that we will be using on our server. The variant of Linux that I prefer to use is Ubuntu. Nginx will be our web server. It is the first layer of contact between like your users and the server itself. It manages routes your traffic to like application layer, and the application layers being PHP and MySQL. So MySQL is our database server, our backend database, and PHP is, well, the language framework to execute PHP scripts. And as because their backend service is in PHP, so we will be using PHP. Otherwise, you can use Python or anything you want. And this is how the diagram of a LAMP stack generally looks like. So the visitor is first greeted by the Nginx web server, which then decides whether like where to route the visitor, on what web page, on what thing and stuff. So without further ado, I have my own dedicated server, so everything on GamersDen runs on our own dedicated servers. But for this exercise we will use a cloud service, and quite cheap one. It's not the video, or I am not sponsored by them. It's something I just personally use, and because it's a lot cheaper, it's way less. Like, it costs way lesser than AWS, DigitalOcean, Google Cloud, or anything. And you can pretty much like get a bare bones bare bones cloud server for as little as 1.8 or 1.9 euro per month. And then it's like the server configuration is good enough for testing and development phases, and you can just upgrade it whenever the need arises. So go to Scaleway Elements, which is their cloud service, and just register yourself an account, verify and stuff. I already have an account, so I will just log into my account. So the first thing for this we will create our Linux server. So when you log into Scaleway, you will see this dashboard. You should add your billing method, your card or whatever. And now we will create an instance. Instance is basically the term in cloud servers for a server. So you can browse through all these options to understand what they mean, but to make it quick, we will select the Amsterdam region, AMS1. And you can actually create in any of these zones, but the thing is, they have different types of instances, and the cheapest one, which is Stardust, which costs like less than 2 euro a month, including a public IP, by the way. If you don't take a public IP, it's even less than 1 euro. And it's only available in Amsterdam region, it's not available in Paris. So like, if you want in Paris, just go for one of these, which are still like quite cheap. So but we will go with a Stardust, and we will select Ubuntu, yeah, 20.04. Then OS image selected instance type. We don't want more storage. 10 GB SSD is enough. 1 GB memory, 1 core CPU. Enter a name. So let's call this gamedev underscore test server, or what, gamedev underscore backend, like this. Gamedev Unity, you can use whatever text. And the important step on this page is creating and adding your SSH key. And an SSH key is like a very strong file based password. So when connecting to your server, you do not use a password which you have to type. Instead you use a file which stores an encrypted long password. And this is way more secure than simply entering your password, which can be like brute force or hacked or stuff. So basically you can only access your server when you have access to this SSH key. You can click on learn more to go to their documentation on how to create a SSH key for your computer. But for this, basically what you need is Puttygen. I will leave a link in description, but you just search Puttygen and download it. And what we will do is we will make sure in key SSH2 RSA key selected, and just click this generate button, and your key will be generated. So this is the public key which you basically need to provide here, and you need to save both public and private key. So basically by saving them, let's first save these. So test underscore pub, I will call it this, my public key, and do not use a passphrase, just click yes. We don't want to use a passphrase, and we will call this 5 test underscore private. So basically the private key is what you store on your device and you provide it to the SSH client when connecting to your server, and the public key is what you provide to your host when creating the server. So it is like a two-pair security system. So one key is in your hand and one key will be on the server. And oh yeah, I think we need to add the SSH key first. Yep. So you need to go to your profile and credentials, then add new SSH key, then just browse through your public key wherever you saved it. I'm using my second monitor to browse to this, and this is what my public key looks like. Just copy it, paste it, and we will call it main PC. So basically we can remember which device public key is this, and it's now added. So we will go back to instances, create an instance, Amsterdam, Ubuntu, Stardust, not gonna enter a name or anything. And so I have two keys. Basically this means that both the keys will be uploaded to the server for security, and I can use any of these keys to connect to my server. I will leave it like that. And when you come down to estimated cost, you will see that just change it to month and make sure it's euro 1.83, it's less than 2 euro, out of which the majority of cost is the flexible IP itself, otherwise it's just like euro 0.3 per month, which is way cheap. And the thing is, like, during or after development, if you feel the need to have a like higher configuration for your server, you need more RAM, you need more hard disk, you can just upgrade your server and you will be only charged this this cost for whatever hours you have used. Like if you used it for 1 day, you will be charged it for 1 day, or like it's charged on hourly basis. And the flexible IP you won't be charged again, because you can just like use the same IP on your new server. And for those who do not want to use IP, you can actually make this instance without IP, but we will have a public IP because we want to access our server publicly. Create new instance and let it make the new instance. So it is, our server is now created and we have been assigned a public IP. So if you try to access the public IP, you will notice nothing happens, nothing will open, because this is a very bare server. It doesn't have anything on it, especially a web service, a web server which is needed to like serve any kind of content. So what we will do is, now we have created our server and now we need to set up our server, and after it we will install LEMP Stack. Actually second step will be connect and set up our server. So for connecting to the server, you have two choices. You can use this button, which is console, to connect to the server, but well, let's see if I'm right. I think this might Yeah, it won't work because we do not have a password based access. We used SSH key. So what you will need is a SSH client, and there are two well-known clients for using SSH and connecting to servers. The most famous one is Putty, but it is quite old and outdated, you can say. So what I personally use is something called MobaXTerm, and it is a client, like it is a client tool which provides SSH access, FTP, VNC, RDP, etc. So just download and install it, and once installed we will open our MobaXTerm, and then you need to go to session SSH. For remote host, paste your public IP, which is provided from here, and username. So the default username of the super admin on Linux and most of its variant including Ubuntu is root. So we use root, and then we need to come to advanced SSH settings and tick mark use private key, and then browse and supply it our private key which we saved earlier. Do not use the public key. The public key we have already uploaded when creating the server. Now we need to use our private key, which is our password. Click OK, and it will connect to the server. Select yes. It will also be saved. And now we are logged into our server. You can see root is the username @ and this is our server's name, because we did not use or provided a name when creating our instance. We are using the default name, and Linux servers are run using something like DOS commands. So just follow me on this. Repeat the exact commands which I will provide in the blog post, and I will explain what each of them does. So the first command we need to run is apt update, which basically what it does is it updates the uh, repository, which is like the OS, the Linux database for available packages, softwares, etc. And so we have now like updated our repository and made sure it's up to date. So I think we can now move on to install our LEMP stack. So we will do this in two parts. First we will install the MySQL part, or actually let's just install the Nginx part first. So for that you need to like use this command, and basically it's the same. It's telling the OS apt install -y means yes. So if you do not use -y, and run the command without -y, it will ask you with a prompt if you want to install these packages, and using -y parameter basically tells the OS that do not ask me, just install all of these. So what we are installing is Nginx, PHP FPM, uh, it's a variant of PHP, and we are installing some PHP modules. These are not really necessary, but something I just install on all of my servers when setting up LEMP. So the modules we are getting are PHP mbstring, PHP gettext, PHP curl, PHP int international or INTL, PHP XML, PHP JSON, PHP MySQL ND, PHP MySQL, zip, unzip, vnstat, iftop. So these are just for monitoring bandwidth and traffic. And make sure you do include this PHP MySQL package, because without it PHP will not be able to connect to MySQL databases, something which is needed by this PHP RPG service. So we will just hit enter. Unable to locate PHP gettext, not a problem. If it's unable to locate something, just remove it from this list. Probably the repo is sold. Only the main parts are Nginx, PHP FPM, and PHP MySQL, unzip and zip. Rest are all optional. And I didn't tell you before, but the way to paste in MobaXTerm is simply to press and hold shift and press the insert key. I will show that in a moment. So as you can see from all this output, what we are installing is PHP version 7.4, and yeah, it's the latest one. Latest is 8.0 now, I think, but 7.4 is stable. It's completed. Okay, so the way to paste things are like, if you copy, you can copy using Control C, which is also the command to cancel any process or anything, so be careful with it. So to paste something, just press shift plus insert. Like, just copy the command from my blog, come here, shift plus insert, or right click, either works. So next command we need to run is php and mod mbstring, which basically means enable php mod mbstring. Then what we will do is ls command means just list, so we will cd change directory to /home. By the way, this here is SSH browser, you can keep it reconnected if it times out, and it's useful because you can just use it as a mini FTP browser or thing. Change to home, and we will make new directory here called RPG. Then we will change our directory to RPG, and let's first download the package. So the download command is wget, then paste the link. The file is downloaded, ls, we can see the file is downloaded. Then we will type unzip and the file name. So if there is only one file in the directory, you can just press tab and it will autofill the file name, whatever file is available in the directory. We have unzipped the file, and we can refresh in our file browser and see RPG folder, and the zip file is extracted. So what we will do is we will go inside that RPG folder which is extracted, and you can see all the files are present here. We will use this command move asterisk or star means move all the files, and then we will move all the files outside this directory and exit this directory. And the reason for this is because we need all our content inside the directory we made, otherwise you will have to use this full directory path, which I don't like. And then we can just delete this folder, and now you can see all the files are available here. So before setting up Nginx, actually let's set it up first before moving to MySQL. So now if you try to go to your IP, you will see this web page, which is the default web page of Nginx, and we will not be setting up or linking our domain in this video. We will just be setting up our web service on the IP itself. So for that, let's go to the directory where Nginx saves its configuration file, which is called default. And now, so there are two ways to edit this file. One of them is to use the built-in Linux editor called Nano, but it will be harder to explain the commands, shortcuts, etc. So just copy this path and paste it in the file browser, press enter. You will come across this file, right click it, open with, and open it in Notepad, or I use Notepad++, so I will use that. And this is how the file looks, and the default file is quite okay. All you need to do is like just change this root path, and we need to set the root path to the directory we created, which will be /home/rpg. Basically it tells Nginx that by default serve all the files from this directory instead. And then you need to uncomment these lines. Do not uncomment this, or actually if it feels easier, just copy this whole Nginx configuration file from my blog and like delete this and paste whatever I have provided in my blog. It will be easier. So let's save this. It will ask you to save the file, press yes. And now if you try to access the IP, oops, so after this we need to also restart Nginx service, Nginx restart. You need to restart Nginx Webserver whenever you make any changes for them to take effect. Let's see, we have an error on line 56. I uncommented this, sorry. It restarted successfully. Let's try reloading this, and we get a forbidden error because we have not provided what file to access. So what we can do is we can go to home/rpg, check our list of files, and to make sure it's working, let's try the phpinfo.php. Yep, So basically PHP works, and this means we have configured Linux, Nginx and PHP, and now what's left is MySQL. So let's set up MySQL as well. Now, similar to how we installed run commands and install PHP and Nginx, we will do the same for MySQL. So just run all these commands in order. Just keep copy pasting and running them from my blog post. So this time we did not use the -y parameter, and now it's asking for confirmation. We will press Y for yes. And then we will do apt update. Basically we are updating the repository to make sure we have the latest version, and we will do apt install MariaDB server. So MariaDB is like a, well, it's MySQL. It will be a long topic to explain the difference. It's MySQL is like a commercial version which is owned by Oracle, and MariaDB is a community port of the MySQL database server. Both are the same things, just different names. So once MySQL is installed, run this command MySQL _secure _installation. We are going to like remove some default MySQL settings and secure our MySQL. So default current root password is blank, just press enter. Set root password, yes, and just set up your root password here. Enter your password, press enter. Remove anonymous users, yes. Disallow remote login remotely, yes. And access to it, yes. Reload privilege tables now, yes. So MySQL is successfully installed and configured, but we need to make do we need to make this change? Never mind. So there is a small configuration if you need to like access MySQL remotely, and which is to configure the bind address, but because we are running MySQL and PHP on the same server, and this is a simple installation, we will skip that part. Execute command MySQL service MySQL restart and MySQL is now ready. So what we will do is we will now log into MySQL and create our database and user, so we can like configure our RPG service. So run this command MySQL -u root. It allows you to log in as root user through the server, and from this point onwards we are logged into the SQL server, so we will use SQL queries instead of Linux commands. So let's first create our database RPG. Then let's create our user RPG_user. So this is the database user which will have access to this database, and identified by means this is the password, so I'm just using blah blah as my password. Query, okay, if there was any error it will notify you. Then what we will do is we need to so we have a database created and we have a user created, and now we need to grant access or permissions on this database to the RPG user. So just execute this query, and then we will do flush privileges and quit. Flush privileges just means a reload of the MySQL schema or whatever. Quit. So now we are ready. We have our database created and everything, and so like we are done with the LEMP stack, and I suppose the next thing in order would be to configure our web service, backend service, game backend web service, and then we can move on to install PHPMYADMIN, which is basically like a GUI, a user interface accessible through the browser to manage your databases. And this I will actually take as an optional step. I will tell you in a bit. So let's go to our RPG PHP service, and the instruction says set config in here. Okay, so reconnect SSH browser. Let's go back to home, RPG, configs, config.ini. Open in Notepad, and so the database host will be localhost, port is 3306. We only need to change these three things. Database name is RPG, database user is RPG_user, and password was blah blah. You can change the time zone. It's set to Indonesia by default. And there are some other things, but I'm not configuring this. So for the table prefix, we will use a prefix of RPG. If you do not use this prefix, all the tables will be created directly using table name. Using a prefix means they will be created like RPG_player, RPG_clan, etc. It's just easier to like discern and differentiate between your tables. So just save, and the file will be uploaded and saved. Okay, so let's see. It says browse to SQL importer.php. We will copy this. There is one more step I missed actually. I will edit this video to introduce that step. And we need to add some extra configurations. So this makes sure, like with default settings, Nginx usually times out after 30 seconds I believe, or if you try to send a request more than 2 MB. So we are just increasing some default limits of Nginx, so to make sure long execution scripts do not time out. And similarly, we need to go to PHP folder 7.4 FPM and edit php.ini, and the things that we need to edit are execution time. This is on line 388, just increase it to 60 seconds. Memory limit to 512 MB. We have 1 GB memory, so it's fine. And then post max size to 100 MB. This is so we match the the settings in Nginx. And there was one more thing, upload size. upload underscore max file size to 100 MB. Again, you can just copy paste this file from my blog and just paste it here, save it, and then run service nginx restart service PHP 7.4 fpm restart. And I just realized that we need to increase those limits, because if you run this importer script, it will basically time out because it takes quite a long to execute. So let's run it now. And in meantime, oh, it ran fast. Okay, done, and we are basically done setting up our backend for our RPG game. And what you need to do next is just go to Unity game instance. In the web service client, it says service URL, so I have like set up my URL here, and you can just change it to this URL. We have not set up any domain in this tutorial, so it will be just HTTP, your IP address, and make sure there is no / at end of this, otherwise it will break things. And just save your scene. So the only remaining thing now is to install PHPMYADMIN. So basically you can view your database and all its data in easier form like this, the tables, the like if I want to see the players, make changes to it and stuff. So what I would personally suggest is, instead of using PHPMyAdmin, which basically poses a security risk kind of, because anyone would get access to your database that way if they know your PHPMyAdmin login. Use a desktop based client to manage your SQL database, so something like HeidiSQL, which I personally use. So you can just download it, install it, and go to file, session manager, create a new session, test db, and for hostname IP, so to set up PHPMyAdmin, we will go back to our SSH thing and let's do it. So to install PHPMyAdmin, just execute these commands. It tells to install Nginx, which we have already installed, PHPFPM already installed, MB string I think already installed, get text is failed, we will see now, and PHPMyAdmin. Let's try running this. So get text failed again, let's just remove it. We are using Nginx, so just press OK. No need to select either of this. We will set up our web server manually. Yes. Set up any password. I am just using the root password which I used for my MySQL root server. And it's installed. So sometimes PHPMyAdmin might throw some kind of count error, and if it does, you need to like edit this particular file and replace this text with this, but it is only if it throws any kind of count error. We will see if it does for us or not. So PHPMyAdmin is installed, and now we need a way to access it on our IP. So for that, what we can do is we can just map the public directory of the PHPMyAdmin files to our home folder where Nginx is uh, serving files from. So we will use this command ln-s, which creates a symbolic link. So this is the path of where PHPMyAdmin's files are, and this is the path that we want. So this hidden MySQL is basically whatever you want after your IP to log into PHPMyAdmin. So I'm using something like hidden MySQL, and let's see if this works. So we will come here, hidden MySQL slash index.php. You need to put index.php. If you do not want to put it, you can we can just add an index in our Nginx configuration, but let's not do it. So the username will be rpg_user, what we created, password we used blah blah, and go. And here is our database. Here are all the tables. They do not have any record right now because we have not run the game in Unity, but basically it would have otherwise look like this. So I've been doing some testing in my game, so this is how my database looks like. And that's it for this tutorial. I think we have done everything, LAMP and all, and this is basically how you can set up a backend for any of your game service. Obviously you will need the actual backend code as well, but as far as setting up a server goes, this is how you do it. And once you are done using this server instance and you do not want to be billed for it, make sure you turn it off and later delete it. You can go to instances and delete it from here. So this way you will not be billed for it anymore. I think it's shutting down right now, that's why it's not deleting, but yeah.